Hey guys, Tyler Vanderhoeven here. Today I'm going to be talking about kind of expanding on a Medium article that I posted a little while ago about Stellar and developing applications on top of Stellar, and specifically a tool set that I've built or kind of constructed around accessing direct PostgreSQL, their database with GraphQL. And a lot of this sort of just the background of it, just to expand a little bit on why I built that and some of the thinking behind it. Some of you may know me from my application Color Glyph. It was a SBC entry late 2016 or 17 that did quite well. I mean, it's got lots of users, lots of active glyphs, trading going on, but the entire application is primarily just a Mongo database, a Meteor.js application that mirrors colors back to Stellar as assets. So each color in the limited 256 palette is mirrored back to Stellar. So it's not a direct sort of correlation between Stellar and the assets or the things that you're interacting with. So in V2, I've begun working on an application that these individual glyphs are their own assets on the Stellar network. So you'll be able to buy and sell and trade and make assets on ColorGlyph, but behind the scenes, everything that you do is happening on the Stellar network, which essentially means you'll be able to go to some other application like Stellar Expert or Stellar Term and see those active trades, create other trades, maybe take a glyph and trade it for USD on SDEX whenever it comes out, or depending on what Farex looks like, you could take those assets and trade them and move them in other places, which is something you really can't do right now on ColorGlyph. So as I've been building that out, quickly ran into some issues. The native Stellar SDK, JS Stellar SDK, built on top of the REST API known as Horizon. So if you were to go to the Horizon API, either the testnet or the pubnet, you can interact with it, create writes, create accounts, or move assets around. But there's a lot of things that you can't do, which would require you to have access to the backend Postgres database. And there's actually two of them. There's a Horizon database and a core database, where all the actual information for the distributed ledger lives, which is all well and good, but to be able to access that, you need knowledge of Postgres. You'll need to create some sort of API layer between the two so that on a front-end application, if you need some information that the Horizon API doesn't give you, you'll have to create your own API endpoint. So that's kind of where I was a few weeks ago. I'm slowly building out endpoints for my ColorGlyph V2. And this is just, this is not what it's going to look like, but it was sort of just a demo example for just getting started. And so essentially, you're just building out a bunch of endpoints for things that you need. And one of the big ones was each glyph is its own asset. So it needs to be issued from a central location so that people can't just make a glyph and say it's an official glyph and it has nothing to do with ColorGlyph. So there needed to sort of be this one source of truth that, hey, if the asset came from this account, it's a legitimate ColorGlyph. So you have this singular account issuing all these assets, but then I needed a way to say, okay, give me all of the assets that have been issued from this one account. Essentially, show me all the glyphs, which would be similar, in the Mongo database right now of go to this collection and give me all of the assets. There isn't any way to get that information out of Horizon. You have to have both an issuer and an asset code. So I'd have to go in, I'd have to remember all of the assets that I've issued, and then ping them one by one to get the information. That's just ridiculous to expect that thousands of these glyphs, I can make all of those calls. That's just not going to happen. So then you have to deal with some sort of cache, which will ping it every now and then, so that you lose your real-time nature. Just creating a lot of problems. So it's kind of where all this idea sort of first started coming to a head, is I need a way to access all of the assets that a single account has issued and that has been trusted by someone else. So a trust line's been created between any account and this sort of official account issuer, or glyph issuer, which is supported or backed with the official ColorGlyph issuer. So that's where sort of diving into the Postgres database came into play. You know, I pulled in one of the Docker, the official Stellar Docker instances, and got it running on a DigitalOcean droplet. Started building up Postgres endpoints, or actually Postgres requests, and then mirroring them to an API endpoint that you could pass a few parameters to, very similar to the way Horizon works, just building out a few new endpoints. But it quickly became clear, like, okay, I've got one that's helpful, but now I need to build another one and another one and another one. And sort of the point, you know, building ColorGlyph 2.0 became all about building endpoints, and it was just a little bit frustrating. Like, all I want to do is access this information so that I can, you know, build my app. I want to build my app. I don't want to have to fiddle with getting this information even accessible. So that's when the idea hit me of, is there a way, or is there a tool that can sort of mirror a Postgres schema over to GraphQL? So you could essentially just write GraphQL requests and have it immediately accessible or immediately connected to a Postgres database. And lo and behold, there is a tool called GraphQL, or I think PostgreSQL. They've changed their name a couple times. That allows you to do just that. So basically, you just npm install this tool set and then connect. You know, I want to go to this Postgres database, this username, password, blah blah blah. It links that up, connects it perfectly, and because the Stellar schema, the Postgres schema, is written so incredibly well and detailed, you have access to comments and exactly what's available, what type it is, just everything you could need is immediately available in that GraphQL request. And we'll get to that in a little bit, probably in a later video, but essentially what it allows you to do is exactly what I needed in the original sort of first place, this request that basically will deliver all of these assets from an official account. So each one of these, if we were to inspect them, is its own Stellar asset code. So this right here is a Stellar asset code. So if we were to go and look for that asset code on something like Horizon in the laboratory, you would be able to find it because it's an actual, at least on the testnet, it's an actual asset that's been issued from the official ColorGlyph account. So what the API endpoint does, or the GraphQL endpoint does, is look at the official account and list out all the assets that it issues. And you can see, so right now there's I think there's like 2,200 of these images. So when we refresh the page, it goes ahead and makes that call to GraphQL. GraphQL makes it to Postgres, and then it loads in. So it's not like instant, but for loading in over 2K images from a Postgres database, like, it's incredibly quick. And I'm not going to load up 2,000 of these, you know, right on the front page, but I think it just sort of shows by example how quick and efficient and effective this method is of connecting a GraphQL endpoint to the Postgres database to give you access to all of this information. So essentially, let me just show you real quick in the code. That's basically what this request right here is. So we basically go to the Postgres database. We say, I want to get all of the assets from a particular issuer, and all I want is their ID and their asset code. Their asset code being the thing that will actually give me reference to what image to draw for this. And that does come still from MongoDB, where you've basically got an asset code which is referenced in a Mongo database, which says, hey, this is the array of colors that I want to draw on this line. Because there isn't, unlike maybe something like Ethereum where you could put in a lot of extra metadata or code into that smart contract, in Stellar you really don't have access to a lot of extra information. And hopefully maybe someday they'll add methods for adding some metadata to where each asset, all of the information needed for each one, like its maker, when it was made, the colors that are inside it, how many times it's been traded, like all that metadata would be possible to store within the asset code on Stellar itself. But currently it's just basically the asset code which mirrors to the Mongo database, which gives you all the expanded information about what that code should, or what that asset should look like. And then when you go and click on it, it gives you the unique ID for that asset. So there's another call in GraphQL, or I guess technically Postgres, where you can go and look for a single trust line with its ID and get all of its information. So if we were to go and click on that, it'll go to the Horizon testnet and show you the information about that asset. So TOML file, asset type, so it's the alphanumeric 12, asset code, this is the issuer, this is the paging token, how many are available worldwide, the number of accounts which currently hold some part of this amount, this asset, and then any flags you might have on that. And just real quick, if we go back over here and we say like that request that we saw before, just comment that out real quick. If we put in that issuer that we just saw in that horizon, this guy right here, you can see right away like this is a request that we're making for getting this right here. So this request right here is this one. And if we remove this first, you'll see how quickly this can actually run to get all of those thousands of accounts, I'm sorry, assets, just amazingly quick. And then like most of the time on that page is just generating all of the DOM nodes for those images and getting those image assets. The next one here would be that second one. When you actually click on an image, there's a lot of data that's included with that for that trust line. So we just have an ID that's loading into this query, which then gives you all of the information about the account that holds it, the asset type, the two that would be that alphanumeric 12, the issuer, the asset code, the T limit, the balance. And this would be like in the Stroops amount. So instead of the 0.000, it's just the single 256, which this is mapped obviously to the colors. So each of these is a 16 by 16. So if you hold, 128 of those, you'll own half of this glyph, which you can then go and trade. So it allows you to split a glyph down to its pixels and sell individual pixels of a glyph. So kind of some cool stuff you'll be able to do once it's all said and done. So anyway, that's kind of the basic premise of what it is I've built and how you can begin to use it in your front-end, back-end applications to connect directly to the Postgres databases, Stellar Postgres databases, through this is a tool set that I'm using, the Apollo application inside of Vue.js, where you can start to create all of these connections and requests inside of this just straight up front end application. Like I mean, this is just running on Surge, similar to like a GitHub page where you have this pretty powerful, complex application all running directly on the front end, no need for a back end. And with a connection like GraphQL straight to Postgres, you still don't need a back end. So that's pretty fantastic. For things like auth and the connection to the Mongo database, there probably will be like a mini microservice that I'll build on top of V2, just to make those connections a little bit more secure, especially for actual Stellar, like when you go and make a trade or an offer or something, I don't want access to your secret keys on the front end, so all of that will be handled server side. But essentially that's sort of what we're building. The next video, I'm going to show you how to get this GraphQL service. Sort of you see how I'm running it on a URL right here. I'm going to show you how to get that running on your own DigitalOcean servers, or like any server that can run Droplet or Docker, sorry, so that you can run this system on your own servers. You can also, I mean, you could use mine, but just for the security and any extra functionality you might need to write, if you are very familiar with GraphQL or even PostgreSQL, you'd be able to write your own plugins, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we'll get to in the next video.